All right, we are live on YouTube.
Good, thank you. Well, let's open the 417th regular meeting of the City of College Place Planning Commission. And first, can we have roll call? I don't know, Chris.
Randall Brennis.
Present.
Ben Dawson.
Present.
Brandon Aberley.
Present.
Ruben Alvarado.
Present.
Leroy Wagoner. Leroy Wagoner is present. There
I
we
am
go.
present. Yes, sorry.
And Todd Reiswig.
I'm present.
Thank you. We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Good. So do we have any public comments? Anybody online or any written public comments?
We did not receive any written public comments, but we do have one attendee online.
Does the attendee wish to address the commission at this time? There will be, just to clarify, a public hearing later on in the regular agenda. So this is just a general time for public comment. But I don't hear anything. All right, with that, let's go to consent agenda. Does anyone of the any commission members want to address anything on the consent agenda? The minutes from the August 15 meeting, or if not, I'd like a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Commissioner Reiswig here, motioning to approve the consent agenda.
Second, Wagoner.
Okay, then let's vote on the motion to approve the consent agenda items 2.01 through 2.03. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any in opposition? Seems like it's carries by. And with that, let's go into the regular agenda. And who is going to lead us through this? Is it Mr. Dorn?
Oh, I'll start out. It's John Rickard, Community Development Director for the City of College Place. Over the course of 2023, we have been working on the development code update. In a few seconds, I'll have Greg kind of give us some highlights of that. But we procedurally, we notified the Department of Commerce of the proposed changes, and there's typically a 60-day public review period that the state agencies have. We requested an expedited review, which you can do on development regulations, and that was granted on Monday. So the expedited review was a 30-day review. And so we have not received any comments from the state in general. And then we also issued a determination of non-significance for the environmental review. And then we went through and provided public notice earlier this month in regards to this hearing. So Greg, if you would like to provide some highlights of the regulations, that proposed changes that we have been working on and are up for public comment.
Sure. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can hear you pretty good.
Great, great. Well, thank you. And I can see on my screen, John, a memo that was provided to the Planning Commission that lists out the general category of the amendments that are under consideration. And as you noted, John, the Planning Commission has been reviewing these and discussing these over the past year. Hopefully the member of the public that's on the line can see the memo as well. But to briefly state, there are a series of amendments that are necessary to comply with a recent change in state legislation to further streamline the processing of project-related permits and applications. And by and large, the city's regulations were pretty well up to date, but there were some minor changes that we made, and they had a rippling effect throughout the document. The state also recently made some changes to the state law that would affect the city as it relates to accessory buildings, accessory structures, particularly accessory dwelling units. And the significant change there is the state legislation that now would require that if that cities allow for 2 accessory dwelling units on a site as opposed to just 1. So that too has a rippling effect through the regulations, and we've made those changes. But once again, the city's regulations were pretty well up to date, and so it's not as significant as a change as it will be in perhaps some other communities. We discussed in several of the meetings with the Planning Commission changes to some of the exemptions of SEPA thresholds. And the goal was to, once again, take advantage of some changes in state law, but also to do so in a way that would be consistent with what the city of Walla Walla has done, so that there is some consistency within the region, which will be, I think, helpful and appreciated by the development community. We had discussed and made some revisions to the regulations that govern mobile vendors and food courts. We had updated some references in the codes to the International Building Code and related codes as they are implemented by the city. And then the final category is what we would refer to as housekeeping amendments, clarifying a requirement or requirements that are applicable to corner lots. And then there were just a number of editorial revisions to the document to make more contemporary or up-to-date gender references throughout the document. So, Mr. Chair, those are the 6 categories of changes that are included in the document. And the changes that are reflected in the document should be consistent with the discussions that we've had with the Planning Commission up to this point. So if there are any immediate questions, we certainly stand ready to answer them. Otherwise, Mr. Chair, we could take this opportunity to receive any additional comments. And then at the conclusion of the hearing, it would be an opportunity for the Planning Commission to discuss a recommendation that to the City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Dorn. So with that, Any comments from the commissioners? Any questions from Mr. Dorn?
I had one, Commissioner Dawson here. Number 6, letter A. Could you jog my memory on the change that was made there on corner lots and setbacks?
Yes, it was in part to clarify some confusing language about lots that the discussion started with lots that go all the way through and have so they the front and back both front and back of the lot front on a street, and then it evolved to the setback requirements on the corner lots. And John, I'm trying to remember specifically because we ended up with some kind of simplified language, if I recall, regarding the setback. And do you recall what the specific setback was, John?
I don't believe that it was a change in the actual setback. It was just some clarification on the primary front yard and the secondary front yard on a corner lot. Can you pull it up in your Word document for the review draft and share?
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I'm looking for it right now. And
you can share your screen, Greg.
Okay. So let me see. I go over here to share screen. And then I can let's see, go to mine and share. Here's the language right here on corner lots. The rear yard setback may be reduced to 5 feet. And that was to clarify some language because we had provisions about some kind of confusing provisions about what was to happen in the backyard. So made it clear that if you're on a corner lot, it can be reduced to 5 feet.
And before we did our overhaul of the development regulations a few years ago when it was under Title 17, we used to have it was called a reverse frontage. So it's kind of hard to explain, but basically if you're on a corner lot and the shape of the lot is different than the other configurations of the lot, where like maybe the adjacent lots are real narrow and then on the corner the lot was rotated. It allows you to share where your neighbor lot has a 5-foot side yard, rather than requiring the lot on the corner to have a 20-foot backyard. You allow them to have a 5-foot backyard because you're butting up against another side yard. And because you have more, you've got 2 front yards, it gives some more flexibility on putting a larger house or better use of the lot. And we somehow lost that ability. So that's what this corrects that.
Yep.
Any other questions from commissioners?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Racewig. I'm having some technical difficulty finding where it is. I didn't remember that we had called out a specific eave height for the accessory dwelling units, and I noticed in here there was one. I thought it was governed by whatever the house primary dwelling requirement or the single family dwelling requirements are of an average of nothing greater than 35.
Yeah, the state law necessitated some changes in that regard from what the city had previously adopted. And so as written now, those changes are consistent with the requirements of the new state law. That was one of the areas that was affected.
Yeah, so we used to be able to limit the eave height on an accessory dwelling unit and now we can't. So are you saying that you see that the language is still in there?
Yeah, I think it had, I'm trying to find it, John, but I think it had 14 feet crossed out and had 24 feet as an eave height. And like, I thought it was required to be no more restrictive than what the house requirements were. And if memory serves me correctly, 24 feet is more restrictive than what the house is.
It is, our building height in residential zones is 35 feet. So Greg, I think that should be 35 feet.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to just double check that against the state law. So maybe I could take a minute to do that, or while during the actual hearing, I can just have a minute to check on that. That'd be helpful.
And I'll keep looking and see if I can find it here.
Any other commissioner? So hearing none, let's open the public hearing. And 7:17, is that? I mean, yeah.
So, yeah, basically you call the meeting to order, or call the hearing, open the hearing.
So let's open the hearing. There's no one present here in person. Not sure if there's anybody online that wants to participate in the public hearing. If there is, should
Please
they raise their hand? Is that the process? Raise your hand. On the virtual meeting, then we can recognize you.
They're not raising their hand. Okay.
So there is no one providing any public testimony then. So with that, then
Mr. Chair, this is Greg Dorn again. I am looking at the state legislation, and what the state legislation is that says that ordinances should not establish a roof height limitation on detached accessory dwelling units that is less than 24 feet. So that's where the 24 feet came in, that corresponds with the state law. If it was if the commission wanted to, align that, have accessory dwelling units, detached accessory dwelling units be treated the same as single family residences, we could certainly make that change. But what the state law set the minimum at 24 feet.
Well, we have a hearing that's open right now. Thank you for that information, Greg. Well, maybe we can sidebar that and have a discussion after the hearing's closed.
yeah, so there was no public testimony. So with that, then let's close the public hearing
Great.
at
7:21.
well, I guess here it's at 7:18.
I'm seeing 7:21 on my clock, but
Okay, well, that's what but the iPod, so let's do the 7:21. That seems more appropriate. My iPad here doesn't have the correct time.
that's weird.
Yeah. All right, so with the public hearing closed, then do we want to discuss the one item that Mr. Dorn just brought up as to whether we go with the 24-foot as it's proposed in the current changes? Or do we want to recommend that it is the same as the main dwelling? Anyone care to make any comments or start a discussion on that?
This is Commissioner Ricewig here. My main concern was to make sure we were in line with the state law, that we hadn't stepped outside of the bounds. Personally, I have mixed emotions as a builder. I find the appeal of a 35-foot average. It intrigues me. As a resident, I'm not so sure how I feel about it. But again, my biggest concern was making sure that we stayed within the bounds of what the state was dictating at this time.
So I think there are previous regulations that we had adopted, that we had long discussions on. We had limited the height because sometimes these dwelling units are in the back or close to the or side yards, and we didn't want it to be a huge kind of building right next to the neighbors. So we want to kind of have that in mind. With that, my opinion would be that we stay with the 24 feet. It's already greater than what we had originally, what was in the code, but obviously if there's a major consensus otherwise, I'd like to hear from the other commissioners. Yes.
Commissioner Dawson here. I know with these ADUs being able to use a 5-foot from a 5-foot setback, that makes a lot of sense what you're saying. And I think that makes sense to have that 24. Maybe if that ADU doesn't fit that area, maybe the ADU is a full 20-foot setback from a backyard or a rear property line. Maybe it could be the same height as any other as the main building on that. But if we're going to, plop it right on the boundary, then we reduce the height of it to keep from intruding on the neighbor.
John, can you have any comments?
Yeah, Greg, the way it's written, if it's an attached ADU, it could still be 35 feet if that's what the house was, right? If the ADU is attached to the house, like an addition.
Let me just double check that. I believe that's the case. It just jump back to where the legislation is, and it says detached. So an attached one could be, yes.
Okay, then that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I could see somebody actually building a new structure with a built-in ADU from the start, which is incorporated in the main structure.
Perhaps, John and Mr. Chair, just then to align it with state law, we would say the maximum height of a detached accessory building or structure shall not exceed 24 feet.
Commissioner Adderley, I've got a question. Is there any language in this regarding the size, the property, the lot size? For example, if somebody has a couple acre lot. And they want to put a larger ADU, more than 24 feet, for example, on that lot. Is there a way that we could structure the language so that maybe larger lots can put up taller structures? Would that be something we could write in or consider? Maybe maybe it doesn't matter. I mean, in general terms, I'm in favor of a 24-foot height ADU, detached ADU, but I'm wondering for somebody who maybe has some property, wants to put a shop or something taller than 24 feet on the back end of that property. I guess a shop wouldn't qualify in this particular case, but I don't know if there'd be a way to structure the language around that particular instance. Is it worth discussing or?
So let me understand. So, because you mentioned a shop. So somebody has a larger lot and they build a shop and then they want to convert that shop.
Yeah, put a mother-in-law quarters over top of it or something like that.
I think the original ADUs, the city even had some drawn up were like a 2-car garage with a apartment style home above it. And I totally get the concern. If I was the neighbor, I don't think I'd like the 35 foot at a 5 foot off the line, kind of like they could see clear over. And but I do think it's worth considering that if you do have some of these larger lots and your setbacks off the property line a ways, yeah, we might be splitting hairs and maybe it'll never happen, but it seems like as soon as we don't address it, somebody will bring it up.
John, are you there? If would a variance be appropriate in the situations we're talking about, since it's a numerical standard? Could a homeowner apply for a variance then if they had a larger lot and could demonstrate that it wasn't going to have an adverse effect on neighbors, or is that not the type of thing that should be considered for variance?
I have the ability to apply an administrative variance that's 20%, maximum 20% of whatever the code requirement is if it's a numerical. So you could get, 4 feet out of that 24 feet. You can get a 2-story house in 24 feet. Now, if it's really wide, obviously, and you have a steep roof, then you're going to exceed that. But and typically when we measure, we don't necessarily measure to the peak. We kind of get an average of height because you look at the sidewalls and then kind of go to the middle of your gable end, or depending on the type of roof. So I really don't think that we're going to be confronted with a scenario where, unless somebody wants to do 3 stories, that's when you're going to get into the 35 feet range, honestly, or a really wide house that has a really steep roof on it. So
What's the process if somebody does want to bring that to the city? For example, they want to exceed that 20% variance.
they would have to apply for a variance through the our hearing examiner.
Would they bring that to planning commission or the city? Did they bring?
No, they would apply for a variance, and it would go before our hearing examiner.
What if somebody wanted to exceed that variance? So let's hypothetically say we pass this and this goes into the books, right? 24 feet. And we have one instance or multiple instances of people maybe that want to exceed that and want that number changed.
So
what's the process for doing that?
So we have a variance process. It's a case by case application. So they would have to make their case, apply for the variance. We have a professional lawyer that acts as our hearing examiner and would make a decision on whether or not there was justification to grant the variance. It would be a hearing similar to like this, that notices would go out to the surrounding property owners, the neighbors. So if, you know, if it was a scenario where it was on a small lot and somebody was like, you know, trying to put in a 3-story structure in their backyard, then, you know, the neighbors would have an opportunity to speak to it and, you know.
So, right,
John?
and forgive me, this is coming across very ignorant probably, but I'm just curious if somebody wants to change the law.
That would be,
Like holistically and say, I want it to be 30 feet instead of 24. Is that something that the city,
that would be an annual, so what we're going through right now is
Yeah.
our annual review of our development regulations.
so somebody would bring that to you and they would ask for that to be changed and then we would sit and discuss it?
They, at the beginning of the year, we advertise for people to propose changes.
Okay,
There's an application process. So they would apply for that typically.
okay,
If we were to start getting a lot of requests for, you know, and we started to notice that, well, this is a trend, then, you know, I might bring it up and say, hey, you know, we're seeing these requests. Do you guys want to look at, you know, rolling back the restrictions or something?
okay, that's helpful.
Yeah.
So I guess just to end my time, I guess I am in favor of the 24 feet.
So just as a point of clarification, if somebody actually does have a very big lot though, and they want to build another structure, like obviously if it's 12,000 feet, then they could petition and have another lot and they can build a whole new house or whatever they want to do. So if somebody actually has a very large parcel, they can, you know, still build.
Well, Greg could throw some language into it too, that if the structure meets full setbacks, then it would be treated as 35 feet too. I mean, that's an option as well, but then that would address your large lot scenario where they had plenty of room. You want to go 35 feet, well, then you meet standard setbacks and it's a non-issue. But I will say that you can, you know, your side yard's 5 feet for your house and you can go 35 feet. So it's, I mean, I honestly, I mean, I think it's kind of an arbitrary number. I mean, to be honest with you, and I mean, my opinion is that 24 or 28 or 30, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you're talking about the roof, the height of the roof in most cases, not windows and, you know, I mean, light certainly will affect people's light. But a 24-foot structure is going to shade probably just as much as a 35-foot structure in small lots, right?
I guess I'm a little sensitive to established neighborhoods that might be single story or, you know, and all of a sudden now we're allowing for 2 ADUs additional. And if it's one person, you know, if everybody decides to go do it, then you end up with the same sort of, okay, it looks the same, but I can see how, you know, you end up with somebody doing a 35 feet and all of a sudden it's just like this monstrosity in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah. There is that.
So
Commissioner Riseway?
I actually I was originally wanting to say I like the idea of the clarifying that detached 24 attached, it matches the house. However, then Mr. Rickard brought up if it meets full setbacks. I'm happy with either of those options personally.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend inserting detached on that footnote number 10, the maximum height of a detached accessory building or structure. You know, whether you leave it at 24 or change it to another number, you know, I think that's for the commission, but I would definitely recommend inserting detached so that we are in alignment with the state law.
So should we leave it at the 24-foot height with the clarification that is for a detached structure? I'm not sure how to proceed, John. Do we take a vote? Do we just?
Keep it and then I don't know when your preference is, so and then but I think motion to approve the I have a draft motion, you should look at that 3.03. Recommend blah blah blah, with the exception of adding.
So one of the commissioners want to make a modified motion to, if you look at 3.03.
Commissioner Alvarado, a motion to recommend the College Place City Council approve the proposed amendments to the College Place Unified Development Code with the aforementioned revisions.
So can you specify what the revision is?
Did we say 24 feet on detached?
Yes. All right, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
All right, so all in favor? So vote.
Hi.
Aye.
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 No, any opposed? All right, so it carries. So now we are down to agenda item number 4, reports.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I'd like to wish you and members of the commission a very happy Thanksgiving and look forward to connecting with you again before the year is over, but I will drop off now as you continue with your agenda.
There is, and we will take it and it's likely that we won't have a December meeting. So
Yeah, thank you, Greg. Happy Thanksgiving, and I'll be in touch next week.
Excellent. Yep.
And I'll be off the rest of the week, so we'll touch base next week.
Very good. Thank you all.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks.
So it looks like there's commissioner training, John, or
Yeah, so
want to talk about that?
I think our clerk has sent out some requests for people to do some of this required training, and we've been sending links that take you to the Attorney General's office, their webpage, and it's not very user friendly. And so this, we'll push this out to you guys again after this meeting. But so you'll have the links fresh. You only need to do the Public Meetings Act training. So it's about a 40-minute video that you watch. There's no test or anything at the end of it. But then the one thing you have to do is download the certificate and then sign it, and then either drop it in the mail or drop it by City Hall and get it to our clerk, or Christy, get it to Christy and she can get it to the clerk too. So please do that. It's really important that you guys, that we're in compliance with state law on Open Public Meetings Act, and it, covers the bases of, what constitutes quorum, and, if somebody approaches you outside of a meeting and they're asking you questions about something that maybe you're going to be holding a hearing on, and just all the ins and outs of that type of stuff. And that's all I have there in general. Development activity is doing well. We have the villages at Fort Walla Walla. I'm sure you've all noticed that they broke ground. They did their mass grading. I don't think we're gonna see a lot of activity over the winter months unless it stays mild. And then the Villages of Garrison Creek also has their grading permit for the last two phases. It's 14 acres and 70 lots. So off of Garrison Village Way, the north side.
Are they planning to phase that? Do you know?
They are planning on putting all the infrastructure in. And then they will get, I think the phase closest to Sixth and Larch. So they'll build half, they'll start building out the units. So yeah, somewhat phased. 70 total. Burger King's moving along. They should be opening up this winter. Walmart is planning they have an application in review for a 7,000 square foot addition on the south side of the building. That's getting close to permits. And that's for their online ordering processing. So they'll have a better drive up pickup area, but the square footage will be for them to process the orders. So that'll be a nice thing to add to that area down there. What else we have? We completed the annexation of Martin Airfield. That we took in all of that area that was in the urban growth area, including there were 2 private residences that were included in the annexation. And we expect that we'll be working with Corliss on an expansion of the airport operations there. They've have hinted at adding hangars and then possibly adding some small light industrial space at some point, but pretty significant improvements. And that would be on the north side of, the airport operations, everything north of the creek, we've zoned it light industrial. And then everything south of the creek is residential. And so that'll be an extension of Fourth and then up on the bluff, there's room up on the bluff too. So, but we haven't seen anything really on what their plans are or who they might, sell that property to. What else? What else, Christy? We have another annexation that we'll be finishing up on the 28th, South College Avenue. It's about, I want to say it's 28 or 29 acres, and it'll be part commercial and part residential. So it's south of the Christensen and the Christensen property. Well, no, actually it's south of the McKiernan property. Yeah, those are the highlights.
Most of those parcels is kind of people that have small acreage, kind of homes or little farms, right? Back in there, if I remember.
Yeah, there's a 4-acre piece, and then there's some 2-acre pieces, like 3, somewhere in that neighborhood. I don't remember exactly. And then Charlie Conan owns a larger piece, and then yeah, and then Tom Hodgen owns another piece that's closer to College Avenue. So they were the ones that kind of spearheaded the application. There's 5 parties to the application, and then 2 others that the council has decided to include that hadn't applied. So it looks like the council's really trying to avoid creating islands.
Yeah.
On these new annexations. So.
They mentioned a couple months ago about building going on Spitzenberg, I believe. Or some multi-family on Spitzenberg.
Oh, yeah, Bad Sermon. He has 40 units. There's 5 buildings, 8 units each.
Okay.
And right across from Wenzel Nursery.
Oh, okay.
It's across from kind of their bark and
Yeah.
stuff, that part. And they basically have all the permits everything's been reviewed, all their plans have been reviewed. I can't remember if they haven't pulled the permits, they haven't paid for them.
Okay.
So I don't know what he's in a holding pattern of some sort.
Okay.
There's a large duplex that needs to be demoed
Hmm.
and he hasn't figured out what to do with that. But yeah, we're just waiting. Yeah.
Is there anything you can say about, Mike said something about some potential improvements going in on Myra? We're kind of being held up with some communication between City College Place and City Hall. Same with Myra.
Like potential improvements on Myra.
He's talking about maybe a hotel or something going in.
Yeah, I don't usually talk about that stuff. Mike does a little more freely. I don't, but there is a hotel that has been talking to us, and we've seen some site plans that would be right next to where the village is at Fort Walla Walla is building the apartment complex. And there's a Waffle House, I think, something like that. Breakfast place that would develop near that site, and then some other. Basically, it's the commercial phase of that development.
That's also just casual conversation.
Yeah, there's yeah, access is always, a concern, and we have Whitman, and then there have been conceptual drawings of like a right-in at some point off of Myra into the development south of Whitman. And, it's anytime you break and get, add an access to Myra, you have an approval process you need to go through. So, and that requires typically, you need to have a pretty refined site at that point, know where your buildings are going to go. And so, yeah, there have been discussions. There's also some thought about putting in a small roundabout at that driveway where Home Depot comes out. There's kind of there's a pork chop that would go into the south of Whitman, go into the development that's on the field. That would it kind of prevents some turning movements. So eliminating that pork chop and maybe doing a small roundabout there would be a solution, as instead of having a right in, right out onto Myra. So.
I'm just curious, estimated completion time of that multifamily on 6th? Is 6th in College yet?
I don't know the exact, no, I don't have, probably this spring, they probably have a lot of interior stuff to do. They're still, I think they had the 3rd floor framing inspection. There's still a lot of stuff that needs to get done before, yeah.
Is the park renovation there at the Lions Club?
Oh, yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. The bid opening is December 7th. Which is also the evening we're having our Light the Ave parade. So, yeah, so we expect to have, we're out to bid. We're having a required pre-bid conference at the Lions Club building next week. So any contractors they're required to attend that. And so we're expecting to get some nice bids, and we're very hopeful that we'll have, maybe as much as 5 to 6 projects to bidding on it. So
They're just bidding on the first phase.
it's one phase.
I thought they were doing Lions Club, they're doing physical building later or something. next week.
Oh, yeah, that's not part of the project. That's not that's still in like conceptual.
Okay.
Yeah,
So they're working everything around that's getting touched with building standards.
yeah, that's never been part of the project. Mike has another, he's trying to pull together something on that, but that would be completely outside of our project.
So all the work, including the work that they're doing on the creek itself, plus all the improvements that are park improvements.
Yeah, the pond improvements, the dredging, pathways, playgrounds, splash pad, new restrooms. Yeah.
All right.
So the park will essentially be shut down. We will be doing some minor enhancements to Kiwanis Park, mainly an electrical improvement to handle, so we can have the farmer's market there next year and not in the parking lot. That did not go over very well. It's just too hot.
Yeah.
So, and that's going out to bid. We'll go out to bid this winter so it can get, the electrical can get put in the spring, early spring before the market opens.
Well, for one, I'm very glad that the improvements are going to be made to the park. My daughter would frequent that park when she was little, and according to her, it's her park. So I'm glad they're doing improvements to her park.
Long overdue. Long overdue.
All right. Well, is there any other business that other commissioners want to bring up? All right, so let's go to our closing items. There's a proposal that we do not meet in December. John, is that correct? You don't see a need for a meeting?
Correct.
All right, so we are canceling our meeting for December then. Do we need to vote on that, or we just? All right. And with that means that my, and I think Mr. Reiswig's term expires this year, so this is our last meeting. So
This is Commissioner Reiswig here. I responded to the nice person who communicates with us and tries to keep us in line that I'm willing to hang out for another term.
all right. Congratulations, Todd. Anyway, it's been a pleasure, and I consider doing it again, but I'm going to take a little break.
Well, thank you for your.
Thank you. All right, with that, do I have a motion to adjourn our meeting, to close our meeting?
Commissioner Reiswig here, motions to adjourn the last meeting of the year and the last meeting of Chairman Randall's current tenure.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
All right, have a Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you. That the meeting's closed.